Hello there, this is Pilgrim. Welcome back to another episode of Day Trips. Today we will be looking at the French town of Thann. As you can see, we didn't have to go far. Thann is just about 20 kilometers west of Mulhouse, at the foot of the Vosges mountains. Let's zoom in and take a closer look. This is basically the entirety of the town. However, Thann merges with another village in its periphery, and it's very hard to tell the difference between both. However, since we're here for the medieval part, luckily we don't have to, because it is fairly easy to spot, even at this altitude. In essence, this is the new part. Factories, supermarkets, the likes, are concentrated up north, mostly, while the living quarters are more down to the south. The medieval old town of Thann, however, is up here. It's fairly easy to recognize, mostly due to its higher density. However, before we close the distance any further, we are going to switch to ground level and take a look at it from the motorway leading in. Here we are. Like I explained just now, we are not looking at Thann directly, but a neighboring village instead. However, Thann is visible in the distance, if you know what to look for. It's kind of a hidden gem actually, because if you didn't pay attention, you might easily miss it and simply drive past. But if you don't and bother to take a closer look, you can already see 3 of the sites Thann has to offer. So let's do that. The cross on the hill up to the left is basically a World War II memorial. You can easily reach it on foot, starting from Thann itself. It's a very nice forest route, and the location offers a great view. In the center we have the church, also called Minster in the German language. However, in French, the name is CollégialeSaint-ThiébautDeThann. My apologies to French listeners, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not showing you any close-ups right now, because we will be looking at this one in great detail, and I can guarantee you one thing, you will be amazed. The most curious structure, however, is the one up on the hill to the right. Yes, that's the one that looks like a giant donut. I bet you are most curious to find out what this is. It will be the first site we visit today, so you will find out soon. However, for the moment, all I will tell you is the name. It's l'Œil de la Sorcière, which means the witch's eye in English. But before we continue, a few words about Thann itself. According to French Wikipedia of early 2026, Thann was founded in the year 991 AD, making it a settlement of the early High Middle Ages. It was known as a pilgrimage site, but also for its excessive witch hunts during the early modern age. German Wikipedia lists 140 people executed during the time from 1572 until 1620. Most of them were burned at the stake. If we look at the coat of arms of Thann, and yes, this is the current one, it is easy to determine where the name comes from. The similarity of the name Thann and the German word Tanne is no accident. As we can see on the right hand side, it means just that, fir tree. The left side, however, features something very familiar. You might remember it from our visit to Basel Minster. Do you recognize it? Yes, that's right. It's the coat of arms of Austria, as Thann used to be part of Further Austria until the 30 Years' War. So much for that. We will now return to the bird's eye view for a moment to zero in on the old town. As you can see, the old town of Thann basically covers the entire entrance to the valley, which provides it with a good defensive position as well as the ability to extract tolls, since it's easily able to control the roads leading in or out. Unfortunately, there seems to be little left of the medieval fortifications. I could only find 2 buildings I believe to be related to them, both towers. One of them is up here to the left, the other one on the opposite side, which, in combination with the positions of the buildings in between, leads me to believe that the medieval outline of Thann looked something like this. Now the time has come for us to finally get down there and stay on the ground, exploring the area. However, we will not enter Thann from the east, our prior direction of approach, but roughly from the north instead, which means we will be taking a look at the witch's eye first, just like I promised. It also means this will be your last chance to guess what this structure actually is. Please leave your suggestions in the comments. I'm most curious to read them. Here we are. This thing really gives me Stargate vibes, I have to admit. Do you want to know how large it is? Here's me for scale. And yes, I'm a fairly small person, just 1 meter 73. But still, this thing is rather huge. Anyway, here's the answer to your question. In form of this local info panel. It's in a sorry state, I'm afraid. Then again, it's outside all the time and exposed to weather and, well, people. It even comes in 3 languages: French, German and English. I'll just read it to you. The Great Tower was built in the 13th century and was a demonstration of power. When the Rhine became the French border in the 17th century, it lost all strategic significance. It was then demolished by miners. One section still bears witness to the force of the explosion and is now called Witch Eye. So there you have it. This used to be the lower part of the Bergfried, the most massive tower the castle had. However, these were not only built as demonstration of power, but also served as refuge in times of crisis. That's why they are built so massive. It's also the reason there's no staircase. This being the lower part of the Bergfried, the staircase used to be on the outside, usually. This was done in order to make it harder for enemies to enter the tower. The French text from the info panel goes into further detail. It mentions, for example, that the castle was destroyed on order of the French king, Louis XIV, to be specific. This was in 1673. Also, the term miners is a little bit misleading here, as it could very well refer to a unit of the French army being specialized in explosives, as well as mine warfare. However, as these units tended to be recruited from regular miners, it's probably close enough anyway. That being said, the force of the explosion was strong enough to knock the tower over, but not strong enough to destroy it, at least not completely. Therefore, the lower part remained intact, or, well, semi-intact I guess, because just one slice of it is left. With that out of the way, let's move on to Thann itself. You really have an amazing view of the old town from up here. The church stands out in the most magnificent way. It really is a sight to behold. Just one slight problem though. The upper part of the old town is barely visible because there are lots of trees in the way. Call me an optimist, but I think we can do better than that. Like this hill over there. Let's try that. We'll just teleport over there real quick. Yes, this is much better. The church doesn't look quite as nice from this angle, but at least we can see the entirety of the old town now. You can even see the tip of the war memorial on top of the hill. It's the white dot above the church and slightly to the right. Let's start with the tower down to the left and work our way upwards. The river is called Tour, by the way. The tower, on the other hand, La Tour des Sorcières, or the Witch's Tower. I don't know why it bears that name. It's possible that people accused of witchcraft were imprisoned here, especially since towers like this were often used as prisons during the Middle Ages. At least one thing is obvious though. This building was definitely part of the city's defensive network, because it has gun ports. Can you see them? There. They are hardly visible from this angle, but if you look at the base, they couldn't be more obvious. And those are for cannon, obviously. Their size and shape being a clear indication for that. Wandering around town, I found yet another proof to confirm this, which was this painting. Supposedly it shows Thann in the year 1600. The tower may look a little bit different, but the position fits perfectly. Unfortunately, the city gate is gone, as is the tower on the left-hand side. So is the one further back. Also, there are 2 more things we can take away from this picture, if it happens to be accurate, that is. Those being that the church already existed in near its present form at that time, which would prove that the tower is not a neo-Gothic structure, but indeed a medieval one. Furthermore, the castle is still intact, meaning we get to see what it used to look like, and we get to see the impressive Bergfried, which clearly stands out. This picture I got from French Wikipedia. It also is supposed to show Thann in the year 1600. Apparently it is a scan of an old postcard that was based on an even older engraving. My apologies for the bad quality, but this is how it looks like. It does confirm what we saw in the painting though, despite the angle being slightly different. So much for that. Let's move further into town. As I did, I came across this ancient mansion. And yes, it's still inhabited. I can even prove it. Look at the window. The upper left one. There you go. Here's your cat picture for the day. I hope you're happy. Apparently there are lots of things you can do in Thann, like get a burger at Tanner's place. I was really tempted to give that a try. I hope they have an infinity burger. I will definitely go in there the next time I visit. This lovely area is right next to the church. Isn't it nice? I hope you like it. Moving further up the very same street, I came across this shop. Really like the decoration on this one, which is why I decided to share it with you. Also in the vicinity is this building. Apparently it is one of the few houses left from the 15th century. It certainly looks the part. Definitely gives me haunted house vibes. I mean, just look at that window. Before we move on to our next site, let's take a look at the entirety of the old town again. You can actually see it from up here, so you can tell exactly where we are. Here, that's it. It's the town synagogue. This is the front, and this is the back side. Just a little bit further up, we reach the final tower, which I believe to mark the end of Old Town. Just like the one we looked at initially, this one too has gun ports. Even one for a cannon is visible. It's a little bit hidden behind a tiny tree, but if you zoom in, you can clearly see it. It's called Tour de Zigonie, by the way, meaning stork tower. Can you see the metal cage on top? Yeah, this is supposed to help the storks build a nest. That being said, since we have now reached the end of Old Town, we will now move around the tower and head back into the center in order to take a look at the most impressive site, the church. There it is. Isn't it beautiful? Remember what I told you in my video, Gothic at the Upper Rhine? Back then I said that Basel, Freiburg and Strasbourg were the only three minsters to be completed with an open spire style tower in the Middle Ages. I also mentioned that I may have come across a fourth one. Well, you're looking at it right now. According to a leaflet I got at this church, it was built between 1324 and 1516, making it a 14th century church for the most part. Now finally the time has come to get close and personal. Magnificent. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. The level of detail is truly amazing. Just look at all these statues and decoration. Now, this is what I call art. As you can tell from the windows, it's mostly Gothique flamboyant in style, which is the newest of the medieval Gothic styles. Like we've seen before, the flying buttresses are also used to transport rainwater away from the building in this case. I very much like this portal. And the best part of it is, this isn't even the main one, meaning things are going to get even better than this, if you can believe it. But for now, let's take a look at the main tower. Like I explained already, it is most special and considered to be one of the two main attractions of this church. According to German Wikipedia of early 2026, it is 76 meters high. If you believe the French one, however, it is even 78, making it higher than the Twin Towers of Basel in either case, despite the fact that the church itself is smaller. Let's gain some distance in order to get a better sense of proportions. There, see how slender and delicate the tower is? This is truly impressive, even more so if you consider the time of construction. But now it's time to move around the choir and take a look at the other side. Approaching from the north, we haven't seen anything of this side yet. Of course, the fact that the church is asymmetrical in nature is no secret to us. The position of the main tower alone guarantees it. However, seen from the other side, it's even more extreme, since there happen to be several structures attached, probably chapels, that were hidden from us before. And I also noticed something else as well concerning the building material. While the church is mostly built from yellow sandstone, this is not entirely the case. There's also a red one. Look at the bottom section. The foundation is red. Maybe they were unable to get enough of one color and had to use both. This is not unheard of, by the way. Freiburg Cathedral has some yellow elements too, but only a handful. However, there's something else going on here that is much more interesting. Can you spot it? Let's move around some more. How about now? Yes, I'm talking about the two extensions at this side. The large ones, that is. The one in the center and the one slightly to the left. Both appear to be made from a different material entirely. Can you see how rough the surface of this part is? I mean, they try to cover it up using plaster, but you can still see it. I suspect they used rubble stones to construct this. This is only me speculating though. I don't know for sure. This part, on the other hand, is far too smooth. Whatever they used here, I don't think it was sandstone. Maybe brick, maybe something else entirely. I simply don't know. However, more important than the question what kind of material was used is actually the fact that different material was used and what that fact indicates. I've seen this a couple of times by now. Usually it means that a section made from a different material is also from a different period. But whatever the case, for the moment we have to leave it at that. Let's step back for a moment and take a look at the roof. It is covered with colored, glazed roof tiles. They really add a nice touch. and since Thann is not a very high church, you can see them pretty well from ground level. This is where the entrance is, by the way. Funny enough, it is also the only place where the red sandstone is dominant. We have come full circle now and moved around the entirety of the church, which means it is time to look at the second main attraction, the western portal. Here it is in all its glory, and it is truly remarkable. About 8 meters wide and 18 meters high, it offers a variety of the most beautiful artwork. It is also the only place where the red and the yellow sandstone intertwine. I'll give you a couple of seconds to take this in, before we finally enter the church. Here we are. The main portal is now to the left of us, directly ahead, meaning the main body of the church is to the right. Just a couple of steps more and we will be able to see most of it. And here it is, nave, choir and one side aisle per side. No triforium though. You may have noticed that there's no scaffolding anywhere, which is very unusual, especially for a church of this age. I visited this place back in mid-2024, picking exactly the right time to do it, without even knowing. So it happened purely by accident. As I found out, Thann just underwent a major repair and restoration effort, lasting 12 years, from 2008 to 2020, costing roughly €4.5 million. That's why the church is in such a pristine condition now, which I am most happy about. Here's a picture of how this room looked like during the renovation. Everything was covered in metal scaffolding, 8 stories high, weighing 130 tons. I got this information from the local leaflet. I'll put it into the patron section, as usual. However, unfortunately, I only got a German version, which also states that this church is, and I quote, a jewel of Gothic art. I couldn't agree more. Which brings us back to the topic at hand. Another peculiarity of Thann is that this church is exclusively Gothic, which usually isn't the case with medieval churches. There are different styles present, yes, but they are all Gothic styles. You can see all 3 of them in this picture, by the way, so let me point them out for you. They manifest in the rib walls the 3 sections of the main body of the church consists of, so we have to look up. Different from Strasbourg Cathedral, where the main change occurs from back to front, in Thann it happens from side to side, which is unusual. To the right hand side we have early Gothic, in the middle High Gothic, and to the left Late Gothic. Here you can see all 3 of them side by side for a direct comparison. Now it is time to explore the rooms in more detail. We'll start with the southern side aisle and work our way to the north. There's a small chapel, which also happens to be the relic chamber, at the end of this one. But let's take a look at that statue first. Saint-Thiébaut, I assume. Unfortunately, the relic itself seems to be missing. I suspect it's undergoing restoration or something of that nature. So, the only other thing I can show you from in here is that stained glass window you can see in the reflection. Here it is. Looks like very early Renaissance to me. Oh, by the way, the room we are in right now happens to be the lowest floor of one of the 2 extensions we saw earlier. It's the one with a rough surface area. The other one, the one with a smooth wall, happens to be right next to it and can be accessed by 2 doors. Here and here, so you can move around in a semicircle. It's also a chapel. This is what the interior looks like. And now, finally the time has come to take a closer look at the choir. Love those high stained glass windows. They look amazing. As do the choir stalls. Let's turn around slowly and look towards the western facade. Simply breathtaking. I've seen a lot of beautiful churches by now, but this one can easily compete with most of them. The arrangement is simply brilliant. And it's all done in Gothic style, so it almost seems like a one-piece construction. Also, position and placing, as well as proportions, are exceptionally well balanced. You can even see the rose window behind the pipe organ, which often ends up problematic in other churches. Now only one section remains, the northern side aisle. There you go, here is it. And since you told me that you also like modern church windows, here's the one this side aisle has to offer. Enjoy. Now we've basically seen everything, but there's still this floor plan to look at. It dates the different sections of the church, making it very informative. For one, it tells us that this church is oriented eastwards, like it's usually the case with medieval churches. Both neo-Gothic ones we saw in Vosges, on the other hand, aren't. It also informs us that both of these structures, both of which are initially labeled extensions, actually aren't. Well, only one of them is. The other one, this one, with the rough surface area, you can see to the right, is actually the oldest part of this place of worship. The original cell, or seat if you will, while all the rest of the church is actually the extension. With this section being the latest one. Here are a couple more pictures from the interior of the church, before it's time for us to head out again. Here's a picture of the Minster from the south, since we haven't seen it at a distance from this side. I also climbed this hill when I visited the memorial, but unfortunately you can't get a good picture of the church from this one, since the vegetation tends to be in the way. And with this, our visit to Thann comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. For our next day trip, we'll have a target that is rather grim, and in order to tell you what it will be, I will have to refer to Thann for one last time. Can you see the obelisk down there? Well, semi-obelisk actually, because it's not one piece. Here, this is the one I'm talking about. As you probably suspect already, it is yet another war memorial. However, it is not for one war, but three instead. Those being the Second World War, the Algerian War, and the First World War, which is exactly where our next day trip will lead us. Onto the close-by World War I battlefield of Hartmann's Villakopf, and into the darkness of its trenches, where good men were slaughtered by the thousands. May God have mercy on their poor souls.